man.
Hi, I'm John Cronin. I'm a Reform UK candidate. I ran the mayor election, London Assembly elections in May, and
I'm Matt Stevens. I've been campaigning with Reform UK. Richard Tice, David Boyd have been campaigning all over the place, and most recently in the Chesham and Amersham by-election.
okay, talking about the well, first of all, do you want to talk about the GB News boycott? It seems absolutely ridiculous, really. Apparently, was it Stop Funding Hate?
Yes, that's
the
right.
company.
Yeah.
And they've and this was the irony of this. This was done 4 months. They started all this 4 months before they even launched. So how they knew what the show was going to be like? I got no idea.
And these Stop Funding Hate activists this week were tweeting IKEA, Copperberg and all these brands saying, why on earth are you advertising on such a hateful platform? And IKEA responded to one tweet saying, we have safeguards in place to prevent our advertising from appearing on platforms that are not in line with our humanistic values. And that's why they said they withdrew advertising, because GB News aren't in line with their humanistic values. Well, IKEA, how's this? You have 6 stores in Saudi Arabia where being gay is punishable by death. How's that for your humanistic values? You know, so IKEA pulled their ads from GB News, yet they have 6 stores in Saudi Arabia where you can't be gay, women don't have free rights. You know, so hypocritical. Copperberg pulled their ads, the Open University pulled their ads, a number of companies pulled their ads. What I'd say about it actually is Andrew Neil, who's the founder and host on GB, will actually probably be quite happy for all the publicity he got about it, you know.
Yeah, I think he's got more companies that have come forward because of this.
Absolutely.
More than anything. I mean, the one thing that's annoying for me that I used to drink Copperberg, so I'm going to touch it now.
No, it's ridiculous why they pulled their ads.
Do you think it was mainly? It wasn't actually them. Maybe it could have been their advertisers. Maybe their advertising agency. Maybe.
Yeah, possibly. I don't know too much about it. But what I would say is, if my agency was telling me to do something like that, I'd leave them, or I'd say, go away. What a ridiculous decision. You know, if my manager said to me, you've got to not watch GB News anymore, I'm going to sack you, which is in effect what you can't advertise on GB News anymore, I'd say no, I'll leave my job then. You know, you've got to be principled and stick up for yourself.
Because a few backed down, haven't they? A few said
IKEA
they were, then they came back,
because they probably realised leaving is going to do them more harm than staying. And
it's given us publicity, so given GB News publicity as well.
Absolutely. Tom Harwood, who's one of the journalists on there, were actually saying since the whole boycott, they've actually had more companies come on board with them than they have left. So, you know, it's only helped them in that respect. It really is just wokeness gone mad. It's absolutely ridiculous. Really good to see though that Nigel has a show.
Yes.
Every Sunday.
He's one of the reasons I got into politics in the first place.
Same here, absolutely.
It's like I was like at all the main parties. These people aren't talking to me. Then just saw this guy who was speaking my kind of language. He was, wait a minute, this guy is not talking at me, he's talking to me. You know what I mean? There's a massive difference, you know?
Absolutely, and you know, it's good to see he's got a show with a slightly left-leaning Conservative MP. I think her name's Dahina Davidson. She's good, she's really good.
Yeah, Bishop Auckland, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. She's sort of centre, lefty, righty. She's not, you know, not Nigel. And then he's got a trade unionist who comes on the show with him as part of the panel every Sunday. So it's a really balanced show. It was good to see.
Yeah.
I've quite liked Dan Wootton's show. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah.
Just after Andrew Neil, I think it is. I've quite enjoyed that. Good to see the Chancellor Rishi Sunak on last week. That was a great.
That was a great interview. It was. That's how to interview someone. What I like about Andrew Neil, he asks tough questions.
They must be abs. They have to prepare so much. I imagine for the interviews.
Yeah, because he's right on it. He just goes for the juggler.
Goes for the straight away.
Of course he does.
Absolutely.
Okay. You were down at. You done a lot of campaigning down at Chesham and Amersham.
Absolutely.
So, was the result a surprise for you?
If you told me the result was going to be how it was a month before the polling day, I would have been surprised. But in a couple of weeks leading up to the election, it doesn't surprise me one bit. And the reason it doesn't surprise me one bit is because Liberal Democrats put so much into it. I mean, they literally had thousands and thousands of activists flooding the area and knocking on every door. And I mean, literally, Richard and I were walking down this street campaigning, and I'd never seen so many Liberal Democrat boards. Honestly, John, every house, you know, 1 in 2 houses had a Liberal Democrat, you know, the big orange boards outside of their house. It was absolutely staggering. I was in disbelief, and it was not a surprise at all for me.
I've noticed that the same round here. You see Labour, for example.
Yeah.
you see them everywhere.
Yeah.
You don't see them at all. Then a few days before the election,
about a week and a half.
They're everywhere.
Absolutely.
And then the thing, what we don't do, we don't go away. We don't disappear. We always want to be noticed. We want to get involved in local issues
100%.
and all the rest of it.
Absolutely. I mean, for us personally, Reform UK, it was great. We did well. We were sort of on a par with Labour, which is pretty good for a first election, however badly Labour did. But it was great.
They didn't get their deposit back, Labour.
No, they didn't. They got 1.6%. I mean, they've got more members in the constituency than they got votes, which tells you a story. But I mean, it was great for us to have we launched our new battle bus, which is brilliant. I don't know if you saw pictures of that at all. It was great to go out on that. That's a permanent thing now. It's going to be with us all the way through any election campaigns we have. So that was great. It was great to get the exposure out. People saw it a lot. It was great.
Do you think the Tories got something to worry about?
Very good question.
After this result?
Yes and no. I'd say no because the Liberal Democrats can't put that amount of resources into every... So in a general election campaign, you're contesting 650 seats. You can't put the amount of resources into every seat like we did there. But I do think the Tories have to worry. There are about 15 or 20 seats that are currently held by the Conservatives. They're Remain sort of seats. But, you know, the Labour are never going to do well. Their vote is going to disintegrate from around 10 to 1-2% now. And the Tories are really going to have the Liberal Democrats knocking on their doors for those sort of 10, 15 seats. They should worry, but I don't think we're going to see a flip like we did there. I mean, Liberal Democrats went up 30%. I don't think we'll see that in all of those seats because they can't put the resources in.
Because it's a by-election, it always draws up strange results. Maybe it's a warning to Boris, block your ideas up, basically.
On the door, just one last thing on this. There was people say it was a protest vote about HS2. Somewhat I'd agree with that. However, the most defining factor really was the fury on the doorstep at how the Tories had let down people in that area. The people felt that there's been so much focus on the red wall seats up north, which there has been, and they felt they've sort of been left behind and ignored down south in those safe seats. So it was really just a protest vote against the Conservatives and how they've been treated, personally, I think.
This is a bit like the working class, really, in general.
That's how the Brexit vote came around, and maybe that's how the sort of Liberal Democrats are going to try and play it and flip these sort of seats.
What I've been doing, I've been round about local areas. What the local council seems to be doing at the moment, they seem to be obsessed with wanting to build on public parklands, and there's been protests. There've been protests all over the borough on various sites. I mean, when you've got about 80,000 empty properties around the whole of London, surely that should be the priority to fill them before you. Building on public parkland should be the very last resort, really.
Absolutely, there needs to be more common sense applied. And consultation to for local residents. It's a little bit like low traffic neighbourhoods in a way, in the sense that there's no consultation until it's done. And the point is here, there's been no common sense applied with things like this, and there just needs to be more. And also, the reason this is happening so often is because these companies have been contracted to do X amount of houses, and they've got to stick to that number. So if they're told to do 50,000 houses, let's say we've done 40,000, they then feel obliged to just go and rip this land apart just so they can fulfil their contract. And there needs to be a little bit more flexibility for the politicians when it comes to that sort of thing.
I mean, at the end of the day, it seems to be that they seem to be like Suffolk Council. Suffolk Council are the worst ones because they are selling off social housing and not rebuilding it. They've got the worst record in I think they've got one of the worst records in all of London for not replacing social housing.
It's the most important thing.
I think there's about 14,000 on the waiting list in this borough alone.
It's a disaster. There needs to be more funding from the government that goes straight to the local council, so they can actually put more council houses. They can actually, afford to build the amount of council houses that
the reaction I got when I was going around all these developments, the protesters seem to think that the council is like a zombie council. In that they're whipped into vote in a certain way. They've got no real say. I think that's a major problem that Lambeth I think one Lambeth are campaigning against to get more clarity. And more So all areas are represented in their borough.
Absolutely, 100%.
I mean, like it seems like the council at the moment is being run by developers
Rather than people who actually have the interest of a local community.
Exactly.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
So we wanted to talk about June 21st and the fact there was a delay to step forward the roadmap. I mean, people talk about this, the amount of cases we've got. Okay, the cases have risen, but since May 1st, the number of deaths has actually fallen by 10%, which tells you the vaccines are working. They're breaking the chain of between cases, hospitalisations and deaths. There's just no need. And I spoke to the publican Adam Brooks last night. I don't know if you have him on Twitter. He's got hundreds of thousands of followers. Yeah. And I sort of messaged him saying, do you have any figure on how much it costs the pub industry? This just 4-week delay. It's going to cost the pub industry £400 million. This 4-week delay is going to cost the pub industry across this country £400 million alone. That's just the pub industry. And when we've got a waiting list of 4.7 million people waiting for NHS procedure, why on earth are we delaying this roadmap when nobody is dying of COVID? I mean, it's literally awful.
All right, they're going to hospital, but they're coming out. They're not putting
within days.
They're not putting a strain on the NHS.
No.
The main emphasis now should be I think there's figures going around. There's about 12 million people
waiting
that
for
are
NHS.
waiting for NHS treatment for other things besides COVID. I mean, like, you can imagine the amount of lives that have been lost to cancer, for example, because they haven't been diagnosed, because they've been afraid to go to the doctor or couldn't see a doctor.
And another thing that's not been spoken about enough,
for example,
as well as that, I mean, absolutely, the cancer situation is awful, but young people now, I mean, are literally as young as 5. The Telegraph reported yesterday the NHS are concerned because of a number of 5-year-olds reporting panic attacks when they meet friends now. I mean, that is absolutely ridiculous. When you're supposed to be enjoying your life most, I mean, the government have instilled such fear that 5-year-olds are having panic attacks when meeting friends. I mean, that is absolutely
crazy,
criminal. That was reported by the Telegraph.
You think about mental health in general as well is absolutely crazy. You know, the damage that's been done.
Yeah, I mean, the fear is unforgivable. I was speaking to a lady on the train on the way here, and she missed a stop, so we got talking, and she was absolutely, her life had been ripped apart. Her restaurant closed with her boyfriend, which sort of forced them to split up. Yeah. Her relationship had broken down. She had to move back in with her mum and dad. She had to find a job because she didn't get furlough. Yeah. I mean, her life was literally ripped apart, and that is just sort of, that's just how it's gone, really.
To be honest with you, do you think this is going to finish on July the 19th?
Possibly, but the only thing I would say to that is I've got absolutely no doubt in my mind that come autumn, come winter, we'll be in another lockdown.
Well, as you know, the other day, Notting Hill Carnival, they've cancelled their thing already because of COVID, and that's the end of August.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
Is that an indication of what's going to happen now?
Hopefully not, but very possibly. I mean, furlough was extended till September. I mean, what does that tell you? That was done ages ago. It's just.
And what's going to happen in September?
Flu season.
People are going to be out of work and all the rest of it. There's going to be
millions out of work.
Exactly, as well.
It'll be an absolute disaster. The government just aren't paying attention here.
Exactly.
It's being ruled by a mob of scientists who are completely wrong. I mean, in January, when the roadmap was first set out, they anticipated that with the old strain, the Kent strain we had then, there'd be 3,000 people going into hospital a day now. And with a new, more transmissible variant, there are only 180 going into hospital. So that just tells you how absolutely awful their modelling is. So, Batley and Spen next, that's what we want to talk about.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's another one going on. It's was that the middle of July?
1st of July is the date. 1st of July is the by-election there. Yeah. So the MP stood down because she was elected Mayor of West Yorkshire. Okay. Labour have a 6.7% majority, which, as you can imagine, is quite easy to flip if Labour had a problem there. There's growing pressure on Starmer to win this. If he loses this, the feeling is he could be in a little bit of trouble and potentially forced to sort of leave his leadership role.
Yeah, the Labour candidate for that is Joe Cox's sister, isn't it?
Kim Ledbetter, that's right, his sister.
Yeah. Do you think in a way it's a bit desperation that they're looking for a sympathy vote, maybe? Very
possibly. I mean, that's very possible. I mean, just looking at the latest opinion poll, they were fairly accurate for Hartlepool, the opinion polls, within a few percent. And at the moment, the Conservatives are 6% ahead of Labour, and that's because good old George Galloway is standing, and he's a real pain for Labour. He's taking, according to the latest opinion poll, 6% off of Labour, and that's the 6% that's going to lose in the election. You see, they've got a 24% Muslim population there, and George Galloway is really tapping into that, and he's going to steal a lot of votes from Labour that could possibly flip the whole by-election around.
Do you think this could be the end of Starmer? Keir Starmer?
No, I don't think it'll be the end of him, because I think who's going to replace him? That's the ultimate question. I mean, a lot of people talk about Andy Burnham, who's the mayor of Manchester.
Yeah,
he's been MP.
But he's got to become an MP first.
Exactly. There's just nobody to replace him. There will be pressure on him if he loses this.
Yeah.
And I do think it is a big if. And the reason I think it is a big if is because of that 24% Muslim population.
Yeah.
They might look and think, right, George Galloway, but they might think George Galloway on 6%, he's got no chance of winning. We need to go and vote for Labour. That's why I think Labour may have a chance of holding on to the seat. It's certainly more harder this seat than Hartlepool was for the Conservatives.
I'll tell you what, they seem that no one seems to be talking about a major issue up there. It seems to be like a poison chalice to these parties. No one's talking about the Batley teacher.
Yeah, well, Lawrence has got a big event on Thursday at 5:30. I think he's doing an event where he's invited the Labour and the Conservative candidate to come and talk about free speech. He's going to question them. So he's sort of trying to raise that issue, although he's not standing. He's sort of tried to raise that issue.
Of course, these issues got to be raised, so you can't keep hiding from these issues.
No, absolutely not. It's a disaster. I mean, lastly, we wanted to talk about the charity Stonewall. So they're an LGBT charity that schools consult, and Stonewall have now come out with the latest advice for teachers to stop saying boy and girl in place of the quote learner. So they're supposed to call now children of 6 and 7. They're not supposed to call them boys and girls and ladies and gents. They're supposed to now call them learners. I mean, that is absolutely wokeness gone nuts. I'm not a learner. I'm a boy.
No, of course.
I'm a bloke. You know. And if people wish to identify another way, if people wish to identify another way, respect that. That's absolutely fine. Just call them out. You haven't got to call them a learner, for heaven's sake. Okay. It's absolutely ridiculous. Wokeness gone mad. Just another example of that.
Yeah. It's crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah. Last of all, just to let you know that I'll be going to an anti-LTN rally on Saturday. Starts at Old Street and finishes at Hackney Town Hall. There'll be loads of speeches there. I'll be doing a speech myself. So if you wanna come down, I think it starts about 11:30. At 11:30, they'll be meeting up there by the Argos, Old Street, and it'll be finished at Hackney Town Hall. It'll be finished at roughly about 4 o'clock, they reckon. You're also going to
the anti-lockdown protest in central London. It starts at 1 o'clock rather, at central London. If you go online, Richard's Twitter, you'll find a lot about that. It's going to be quite well attended, apparently. Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Thank you. Yes.